Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap, joined as always by Byron Lambert here for a Waiver Wire Tuesday edition of the podcast and stream. Of course, need to tell you guys that this pod is presented by mybookie.ag. You can go to mybookie right now, use promo code ROSTER, ROSTER, for a 100% deposit bonus up to $1,000. With that promo code, you can only get it using promo code ROSTER. Another quick reminder to you guys, if you're enjoying this content going out on our feed, our Roster Watch podcast feed, the DFS breakdowns, the trade cast, this waiver wire podcast, Trash Man's fantasy fallout, whenever he gets it to me in time to get it up on Mondays, which didn't happen yesterday. But in general, man, we're getting you guys 4 to 5 pieces of content per week. We need to get more ratings and reviews in Apple Podcasts. So it's super easy. What you do is you can go to the Roster Watch podcast. If you're listening to this right now, just scroll down and click the stars. That's it. Like, you can leave a review, but if you just rate it like that, that's what helps in the algorithm. You can go right now into your phone, search for the Roster Watch podcast. When you see that art, just scroll down, click the 5 stars. I will be keeping an eye on it, and I need to see some more good ratings and some good reviews come in this week if we're going to keep putting these up outside of the paywall. All right. Byron, you got the waiver wire cheat sheet up. I just got the matchup tool up so I can be able to look at this. Snap counts, targets, touches. Well, that sure was a pain in the ass last week with these stat providers. I felt bad for dogging on FanDuel for not having live scoring in week 5. Then all of a sudden, week 6. No, get my weeks mixed up. In week 5, and then week 6 comes along. All of a sudden, there's like a rescheduled game, and little do we know, on the back end, our developer has to do something to deal with postponed games and stuff, and it's like so much harder than anybody could ever imagine. So I felt bad about giving FanDuel so much trouble. But it looks like we're back online this week. All the tools are up, including the waiver wire cheat sheet, and it looks like you have your bidding recommendations in. You have your players right at the very top. I guess, do you want to start at running back?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, so we started running back, and like usual, there's a tier that's at the very top here of its own, and it includes Jerick Mckinnon. Again, you can go to RosterWatch.com, download the waiver wire cheat sheet, get all of Byron's exact list, get his exact tiers, his exact budget allocations here for this. Also, if you're in the chat on YouTube, feel free to put in the names of players in the chat that you're deciding whether or not you should be dropping in order to pick some of these guys up. At the end of the podcast, I'll go through those with Byron, and we'll discuss whether or not those guys are keeps or whether they are drops. Certainly a couple that I have in mind right off the bat for myself. But Jericho Mckinnon. So we saw Raheem Mostert. He has an ankle sprain of the high variety, which we know is trouble. Tevin Coleman should be back fairly soon. We also saw Jermichael Hasty get in, who's made a cheat sheet on the appearance himself, but it's looking like I thought you were swindled with a recent trade that we had made regarding Jericho Mckinnon, just because it looked like Raheem Mostert really came in and got all the action back. And then now it's just back to, I think it's wheels up for Jerick McKinnon now. I think that this is going to be a good situation for him for at least the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Well, that's why I basically had to do that deal for Terry McLaurin and just be fine with that and consider whatever I get out of McKinnon. Hopefully just a little bit extra. And it certainly didn't go the way I was hoping it was going to go. I definitely anticipated him getting more action than he did with Mostert returning, because he'd been so good to begin the season. And I mean, in terms of how he's being graded as a running back, it's been a good season for him. So here we are again, man. Mostert out. I think we're back to the Jerick McKinnon well, but when a Shanahan, you're never totally sure or never totally comfortable with how this thing is going to shake out. So I think we'll go back to how things were just a few weeks ago with McKinnon, but it's not a guaranteed. So again, not a guy you probably want to go bananas on, but if you're in a competitive situation and he's out there, if you could try to get him in, this week and the coming weeks, it's, probably a play you've got to think long and hard about.
I mean, I can't believe he's even on the. I have trouble believing that he's even that not that owned. I mean, is he owned in less? Is he owned in less than 60% of leagues or something like that? He's right.
Well, we're using a lot more ESPN ownership percentages at this point, and we've kind of expanded the waiver wire sheet to cast a little bit bigger net. So, he's a guy that if he's out there, he should be owned, or you should be looking to bid on him this week. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was just kind of surprised to see him on there. Let's see here. So these other guys, Boston Scott, we have Miles Sanders. That looks like it doesn't seem like it's going to be that bad. He should be back, fairly soon. He seemed to have missed any, Pro Football Doc. And then from what Doug Peterson said today, looks like it's going to be fine. But I believe that the Eagles play on Thursday this week. If that is indeed the case, so Thursday this week, and then the matchup tool. So Philly, they get the Giants this week as 4-point favorites. A pretty good matchup for opposing running backs, especially opposing running backs who can catch the football. That's what Boston Scott does. What do you think? I mean, is this a 1 week rental? It's like if you're 2-4 or something like that, and you need the guy. Like maybe this is a dude you could fit in as a flex type deal. How do you view Boston Scott?
Well, I think there's going to be people that need a play this week. And I mean, he's just going to kind of be one of the guys that emerges because of the situation, right? I mean, no Miles Sanders. Look, you're always weary that somebody like Corey Clement could come in and swindle you somehow. He's on the sheet way down lower this week. Again, nothing's a guarantee with Boston Scott. But I think you're going to be facing other people in your league this week who need a play and are going to have to get a little bit aggressive after a guy like Boston Scott, who's out there in a lot of leagues. But this just goes back to our philosophy of it's never a mandate to go after the guys at the top of this sheet. As a matter of fact, oftentimes, personally, we prefer to go after the guys lower on the sheet. So you don't want to get crazy going after Boston Scott. I think there will be a market for him that'll drive his price up a little bit this week. You need to consider him if you need like a 1 week play. But I think there's a lot of folks who can just look a little bit lower down the list and maybe try to cultivate running back at, a little bit of less of an expense this week, Alex. I think that if J.K. Dobbins is available in your league, I would pick him up 100 times out of 100 over Boston Scott. But I know what you've done here is you've weighted the fact that J.K. Dobbins has a bye week, and he's not going to be available in a lot of these leagues. It looks like we have some questions in the chat about. Well, and he's in that same tier, Alex. And it's funny, I had J.K. Dobbins at the top of that tier. But we got the Mark Ingram news coming out today that we don't know how hurt he's really going to be for how long. You still got Gus Edwards in the mix, and they've got the bye. So I thought it was kind of sneaky even having Dobbins up in that tier. I like that move.
I think we should be going to get him. Yeah, I think we should be going to get him. And there's a question about him in the chat. You guys who are asking questions in the chat, thanks to John Ryan, Connor Nero 15, Kip C. We'll get to your questions at the end. And also, if you guys have any questions about who you should be dropping this week, make sure and drop those in there as well. But it looks like Kip C was asking about the whole Ingram thing. To me, it seems like he's probably going to be back. But if he's not, I want J.K. Dobbins anyway. It's only a matter of time before we're talking about the J.K. Dobbins breakout, like we're talking about the DeAndre Swift breakout last week. How about that DeAndre Swift breakout, Byron? He looked so good. He's got so much more juice than Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of volume the NFL, has in store for Swift, what they think he can handle.
Hold on, wait. Really I didn't even realize. Is that game in Atlanta this week? Let me look at the matchup tool. Is that in Atlanta? Tell me it is. It's an epic home. It's a DeAndre Swift homecoming post breakout swindle. I cannot wait for this. Going right back home to the ATL, the 404.
Well, that should be an exciting one for sure, especially against that Atlanta team.
Yep. All right. Next one. Any other, there are a few other guys in this tier. I guess, some of these guys that I find interesting are a little bit farther down. Like, what about LaMichael Pirine? I haven't looked at his snap counts yet. He certainly was in there a lot. I'm just not sure how much I want any player, that's on that. He played 58% of the snaps. Ty Johnson only played 6% of the snaps. Jeff Gore played 35. So LaMichael Pirine was the lead back there, and the workhorse, if you can call a guy that had 9 touches a workhorse. I don't know, man. Like, I think it's an interesting pickup though, because he was a dude who at the Senior Bowl, I was a little bit impressed with his game.
Oh yeah, along with another Senior bowler, JaMychal Hasty, that I really liked all week because I thought he had great 3-down capability out of Baylor. Those were 2 guys that we would have liked. They would have been honorable mentions on our all Senior Bowl team. They couldn't make the final cut, but definitely two running backs we thought had a good week. So always fun for us to see that like become a thing in season. And man, Hasty looks freaking good in San Francisco. He's a good fit in that scheme. He looks like a really good running back. I think he's like the next guy to begin really watching for in that group of running backs they have there. So I think if you don't get McKinnon, or if you don't want to go in on McKinnon, I actually see Hasty as a really sneaky pickup right now, Alex.
There's questions about so people are mentioning Antonio Gibson in the chat, how he has Dallas this week. What about JD McKissic? I mean, Dallas is another team that's been allowing receptions to opposing running. Dallas has been just allowing everything. That team sucks. What do you think about these reports today that McCarthy? I just couldn't believe that the team is basically saying behind closed doors that these guys don't teach, they suck, they don't know what they're doing. Those generally aren't reports you hear from a Jerry Jones kind of team. He likes to tell those guys to keep a bottle on that stuff that they leak out to sources and keep it in house, keep it in the family. What do you think about this?
I mean, I don't know what to think. I mean, comparing it to Jason Garrett's regime, I don't know, man, how much teaching was going on then. McCarthy wore his welcome out in Green Bay. It doesn't totally surprise you, but I mean, he's a pretty esteemed head coach to run something where they're not coaching their players up. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I think the shortened offseason has probably messed them up a little bit, but I don't know. You can't make a lot of excuses for Mike McCarthy right now.
Yeah. The shortened off season sure is a very popular excuse for losing coaches right now. You can ask Tom Herman about that over at the University of Texas. Let me tell you guys about MyBookie. It is fall, and at MyBookie that can only mean one thing. It's winning season. Winning season means doubling your first deposit. Winning season means free bets, super contests, Survivor, and more. At MyBookie, winning season is all about your chance to win big. Bet NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball, UFC, and then some. The craziest sports fall of your lifetime is here. It's simple. Make your picks, win big, collect your cash. Invest in your intuition. Select from hundreds of futures bets, or you can bet games in real time with MyBookie's live betting. Put that big brain of yours to use. Use promo code ROSTER and double your first deposit. New players get up to $1,000 in free play, designed to add more excitement to the sports you love and the games you bet. Thousands of cross-sport wagers, props, and parlays await. Sign up now to bet with the best and celebrate your victory. Your winning season begins today, only at MyBookie. So here's the deal. New customers receive a 100% deposit match. So that's double your first deposit, all the way up to $1,000. So if you wanted to put $1,000 in on MyBookie, you would get $1,000 extra to play with. Same if you put in 100, you get 100 extra to play with. But you can only do it when you use promo code ROSTER. That's MyBookie, promo code ROSTER. Okay. Any of these other running backs that you want to get to, Byron, before we move to wide receiver?
I like.
There's a ton of them. There's a ton of them. I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's a huge sheet this week, but I like that you brought up McKissic. That's a guy.
What if you're in a PPR league or something? It's it's like he's getting.
He needs to be owned and be played. Like my mom is in the 14-team Cockamamie Business Listener League, and yeah. I mean he's a player that in that league, like, dude, he gets started, man. And she owned him for a while, and then we dropped him for Brian Hill, and because we had some other things going on. And I mean, looking back, McKissic in a PPR has been, dude, he's a nice guy to have on the bench if you got to slide him in. He's got a good role right now. I know Damian Harris, the snap counts kind of fell out, and I think everybody feels like we're back to some kind of carousel in New England with the running back situation. I still like him as a guy to keep an eye on. And we mentioned Gus Edwards earlier, Alex. If there is any kind of thing with Mark Ingram, a lot of the attention will obviously and rightfully go to J.K. Dobbins. But dude, they love Gus Edwards in Baltimore, and he's a good running back. So I think if there's any kind of situation where he has a small window to get an increased workload. He's a player you're going to want to pay attention to. And then, I was reminded making this one. We talk all the time last week, or really all season, but we talked about it last week, Alex, about the Benny Snells and the Chase Edmonds and the Tony Pollards. And we kept talking about who was it we were forgetting, and we came up with Latavius Murray. I'll tell you the other guy that I'm starting to think of that we never talk about in that conversation. I'll tell you, if I was an Aaron Jones owner, I would make sure as hell I own Jamal Williams, dude. He looks pretty good this year. He's getting the snap count. Like, he's a guy you want to own if Aaron Jones. He would be a pretty good handcuff if Aaron Jones goes down.
I think he'd be an every week RB2.
Yeah,
you'd be ranking him as like running back 18 every week and just kind of fiddling with him from there, as depending on matchup and how things were setting up with team totals.
So I think he's a guy that doesn't really get discussed as often or as frequently with the Madisons and the Pollards, the Edmonds, the Murrays. But I'll tell you, man, in the Snells, I think at this point, Jamal Williams needs to be a priority for Aaron Jones owners.
All right. Well, and as we get through the season, we always say, at the beginning of the season, you want to handcuff other people's handcuffs. As we get deeper into the season and you want to start protecting your assets, there's not, you understand what your team is. There's not such an opportunity cost associated with all of this grinding on the waiver wire. This is a point in time where we want to fortify. Right. We want to make sure that if we have important assets that we're worried about, that we're fortified with those, while not, crippling ourselves with an inability to make any moves. And if you want to start consolidating in those kinds of ways right now, that I could certainly understand going after Jamal Williams. All right. Wide receiver. What do you think? I mean, everybody's got to go out and get T. Higgins. I can't believe he's still available. What is it? Like, he's still a thing on waiver wires. Like,
he's available in too many leagues. Well, it's a lot of the guys that have been at the top of the sheet for the last week or two making another appearance, and their ownership percentages are steadily rising. These guys won't even be available to be on the sheet in the next, week or so. But
T. Higgins will not. This is T. Higgins' last time, unless he has a horrible falling down to earth, and then has everybody drops him, and then has a bit of a resurgence later in the season. But my guess is we'll never see T. Higgins on a waiver wire cheat sheet again.
Yeah, he looks awesome. I think even though AJ Green had the big breakout game, it was still Higgins who looked like the explosive, exciting player that still produced as well. I mean, it just looks like he's the guy you want to own with Burrow at this point. And he just looks awesome. So T. Higgins, man, if there were so many good wide receivers in this class, it was impossible to be high on all of them. But that's when you look back and say, man, if there was a way to get a little bit higher on him, yeah, that would have been nice. Travis Fulcom, speaking of rookies that you couldn't get high on, I mean, he certainly wasn't one, but dude, we've seen it now. Like, I don't need to see anybody who needed to wait one more week to make sure that was the real deal. Like, we've seen enough.
What happened with Travis Fulcom? I mean, what happened? How did he turn out to be actually kind of good?
Well, like I said, I think anytime you're at the Senior Bowl, there's a chance you could be pretty good. Kind of like you mentioned at the DJ Charks of the past that maybe like didn't blow you away during the week, but those guys, they have the body type. And here's the thing too, they have the measurables and they made the Senior Bowl. Those are guys are good prospects, and some of them maybe didn't have a great week at the Senior Bowl, but that doesn't mean they can't pop a little later on. And maybe that's true for a smaller school guy like Fulcom, Alex. I mean, that's probably not easy. Go out there against some of the best players in the country at the Senior Bowl, basically all future NFL pros. You're coming out.
Yeah, that's true.
Old Dominion, it could be a little bit flatter of a curve for that guy over guys like that in their, rookie off season. Whatever it is, he looks awesome. Wentz likes him. You can't argue with anything that's really going on with Fulcom at this point. So he's much like T. Higgins. I don't expect to see him around next week on the sheet unless somehow the bottom falls totally out. But either way, he needs to be owned at this point.
Kip C saying to tell your mom he's coming for that number one spot in that league. Did she finish number one last year?
It's gonna be hard, dude. She finished number 2 last year. I think she finished 2 or 3 the year before that. She goes, dude, it's the hardest league I've ever seen, and she gets to almost the championship every year. And she's in second place. She's in second place with the most points in the league right now.
A 14-teamer, huh? 14-teamer in that one.
PPR. Dude, maniacal players, man. Auction waivers. I mean, it's a hairy league to try to win, but it's funny because she knows all the teams in there and she loves trying to take them all down. Man.
Hey man, you got
heat sauce and
you gotta love
punch and pie, and she wants to take them all
you gotta love fantasy, man. That's awesome that your mom's that into it. Okay. Mike Williams, you're really into him, huh? It feels like I mean, Justin Herbert doesn't hate him as much as it seemed like he did at first.
I mean, I think he's a guy you got to really think about taking your chances off on. I mean, I know Keenan Allen was hurt, but based on that performance we saw in the last game before the bye out of the Chargers, and based on how good Herbert appears to look, I mean, Williams he's the number 2 wide receiver in that offense. So we'll see. I mean, you get a little nervous about getting bananas, but dude, he's going to be owned. People need to pick him up. If you want to go for cheaper wide receivers on the sheet, we're all for it. But I think Mike Williams is a guy who he needs to be picked up. And maybe if he doesn't I would think he would be picked up with high frequency this week. The only thing I can imagine is maybe if people have forgotten about him because of the bye, but I don't think that's a good idea.
What about Henry Ruggs? Why is he not up in the same tier with Higgins and Fulcom? You just don't think that he represents the same upside?
He's not getting the same kind of volume that those guys are getting. And I also thought that if you're going to go for a guy that gets, 2, 3, 4 receptions a game, then maybe you could just go in on a Christian Kirk or a Brandon Ayuk at this point. I think those guys maybe put a little downward pressure on Ruggs based on the volume we've seen at this point, but he's at the top of that tier. If you want to spend up a little, that was a tough one. He was a tweener for me. He could have gone in the top tier, but we just haven't seen out of Ruggs with consistency yet or volume what we've seen out of Higgins or Fulcom for that matter. I mean, can you even believe that we're saying that? It's really hard to believe that.
Fulcom.
You got Travis Fulcom, Chase Claypool, all these guys. Ruggs has been fine, but he's not really I'm not sure he's in that class quite yet.
I want to tell you guys quickly about keeps. As guys, so much of our identity is wrapped up in our hair. For a lot of us, from how it feels after getting a fresh cut to the way it's perfectly styled before going out. I know Byron cares a lot about making sure that his hair is perfectly styled. Byron, have you been going to are you going back to the barber shop yet there in Florida? I'm sure it's allowed in Florida, it's just like in Texas. You stick on a mask and go get the hair chopped a little bit these days.
Yeah, man, I've been going back for months at this point.
Well, it's important. It's an important thing to make sure that your hair, looks okay. And it definitely gets, when you get into your 30s, I know a lot of people begin to worry about male pattern baldness if you have it in your family. Let's face it, no guys are ever ready to go bald. Thankfully, now there's Keeps, the simple and easy way to keep your hair. Did you know 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness before the time that they are 35? The best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still have hair left. So why not get treated from home? You used to go to the doctor's office for hair loss prescription. You don't have to go to the doctor anymore. You don't have to pay a copay. You don't have to go in there when everybody's going in there coughing and wondering if they have COVID-19 or whether it's just the flu. You have to touch a bunch of germy stuff that the kids have been putting in their mouths and then putting back into the area there. It's a terrible time to be going to the doctor, but you don't even need the doctor to be able to take care of this right now. You can visit a doctor online. You can get the hair loss medication delivered right to your home. They make it easy, and delivers your medication every 3 months. So you can say goodbye to the pharmacy checkout lines, the awkward doctor's visits, the nurse that wants to stick her finger who knows where. No more of that. Also, you can get generic versions of all these stuff. So if you go to Keeps, you can get generic versions of these drugs. Of the 2 FDA-approved hair loss products out there, you can get the generic versions. And you may have tried them before, but never for this price. Prevention is key. Keeps treatments typically last between 4 and 6 months to see results, so it's important to act fast. The sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you'll save. Find out why Keeps has more 5-star reviews than any of its competitors, and more than 100,000 men trust Keeps for their hair loss prevention medication. Keeps treatment start at just $10 a month. Plus, for a limited time, you can get your first month free. So here's the call to action. If you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/rosterwatch to receive your first month of treatment free. It's free. Why not go do it? If you're losing your hair, there's no reason not to. That's keeps.com/rosterwatch. That's KEEPS.com/rosterwatch. Keeps.com/rosterwatch. Get 1 month free. And then from then on, it's just $10 a month if you go with the generic versions. Prevention is key. Keeps.com. KEEPS.com/rosterwatch. Keep your hair. All right, Byron. Any more wide receivers? You mentioned Christian Kirk. Trashman says that he needed to be picked up last week. We have people in the chat asking about AJ Green. Is it time to pick him up? What about AJ Green? They're asking if should we drop him or should we pick him up? I guess it depends on who's available, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there's guys higher on the sheet available, significantly higher on the sheet available, you might consider dropping him. I mean, I think he's probably a hold, right? Like now you got to wait and see what happens. For most people, AJ Green's a hold at this point. I'm looking down the sheet. Or a trade.
Yeah, I think, another guy that's kind of interesting and something to maybe keep in mind on the waiver wire this week is we've gotten word that it looks like the Houston Texans are going to be pretty interested in doing what they can to maybe offload some future salary, get some new picks, be able to pay the salaries to all of their players with what they've now done with Deshaun Watson. And if that were the case, if they traded away Will Fuller and or Brandon Cooks, I've been thinking about going and picking up Randall Cobb if he's available. I think that he would be a kind of valuable piece. Just if we read the tea leaves about what's happening there, I think one of those wide receivers is going to be gone, and I worry about it for Will Fuller because I really want to keep him with Deshaun Watson. So that's something to keep in mind. Are there any of these deep guys that you look at and you say, man, I have a feeling about this? Another one might be Jalen Reagor, just with how banged up Philly is. He's been dropped in so many leagues. He was being taken in the 7th and 8th round in drafts by people who were really big on him. For us, fortunately, it was not Jalen Reagor who we were taking around that area. It was CeeDee Lamb, which has worked out great thus far. What about those two calls? What about my cockamamie Randall Cobb idea? And then what about the idea of picking up Jalen Reagor? You could have somebody down the stretch here that's a nuclear weapon if Zach Ertz doesn't get back to complete health. I mean, we're talking about Jalen Reagor versus Travis Fulgham. I know Fulgham's come on a little bit, but both those guys are completely healthy. So, I mean, you think about him as prospects, you're just like, what are we even talking about? Fulgham versus Reagor?
Well, I mean, Reagor could be like a Ruggs. I mean, that was the guy I was going to mention, so I like that you brought him up. But he could be a Ruggs down the stretch that you get for a lot cheaper right now. What is that ultimately going to mean? I mean, it remains to be seen. Cobb has retained some marginal like flex value at this point anyways. He's been a guy you've been able to play if you're in a pinch, and he's been able to put up some decent fantasy scores. I think you're already having to look at him just based on that. So if you think there's some kind of multiplier in there with Randall Cobb's potential value that either Cooks or Fuller could get traded, then yeah, I think that makes him a little bit more enticing. That would be an interesting situation to watch. And then the other one is Keelan Cole. I mean, I don't know how long you can trust it, and didn't really expect that kind of production lately, even though we told you guys from training camp that Keelan Cole was still a thing out there. Like, you could forget it probably about the D.D. Westbrooks of the world and stuff. But I guess what surprised me was with 14 targets to DJ Chark, Keelan Cole going for 143 yards on 9 targets of his own at a 75% snap count.
Whenever Keelan does,
surprised me.
Yeah. Whenever what was Laviska's snap count in targets?
It was 7 targets on 71% snap count, 73%. So he
wasn't
was
quite
as pretty.
Wasn't as bad as I thought. It's just I did not notice. I mean, 4 receptions for 11. Keelan Cole and Laviska Shenault are the 2 most negatively correlated players on that team. We've seen Laviska and Sharp.
There's not enough to go around.
Yeah.
Right? Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like, it's just like it's going to be. It just feels like it's going to be
the lead guy, and there's not enough to just go to both the other dudes. And Cole is more involved than maybe some might have anticipated. He's good. He's like a good player for them in that capacity, you know?
Yeah. Any other these wide receivers you want to talk about, or did you want to just kind of go through some of before we get to some of these questions, anything with the wide receivers before we talk about any tight end or quarterback stuff?
Not much else. I mean, I think Miami's heading to the bye, and we've got Tua coming back. I think it'd be interesting to see, like, Preston Williams is starting to emerge a little bit of fantasy relevant. I'm not sure, if Tua is going to be better or worse for these guys than Fitzpatrick. It could be a real breath of fresh air to get him out there. So it's not entirely clear, but I mean, that's another Preston Williams. If he's on my waiver wire, I'm interested in him with Tua coming in next week.
I believe his first completion whenever he came in last week was to Preston Williams, wasn't it? It was when he came in the 2-minute drill. I think it went to Preston Williams, number 18. So yeah, I actually like that call. Tua's going to be good, man. I think he looked good. He's got some.
This is going to be a good quarterback class, man.
Guys, one of the smartest things you can do is go download the Fantasy Life app. It's a free app, totally free. So if you don't like it, just delete it off your phone. I promise you're going to like it. We use them for their news alerts and their community. The Fantasy Life app sends breaking news alerts faster than anyone else. They monitor thousands of reporters, so you don't have to, and send important news as soon as it breaks. You never miss a relevant injury, trade, or other update. The Fantasy Life app also has in-depth reports and on-demand advice from a massive community. Download the Fantasy Life app for iOS and Android at fantasylifeapp.com, or just on your phone, go to the App Store and just download it. That's what I did. Always a little bit suspect of adding new apps to my phone because I'm a neurotic creep that doesn't like adding. Well, I don't like new things. I like things that I'm used to and that are normal to me. And I don't. The thing I hate the most is cluttering up things. I like things to be clear of clutter, including my phone. So I'm very hesitant to add new apps. I can't imagine not having the Fantasy Life app. So go and download it. Trust me, it's an awesome app for sure. All right, quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses. Anything really? The one thing that sticks out to me is that Austin Hooper needs to be, I think, the highest. He just gets targets on targets and on targets at this point. He produces week on week.
That Mayfield got hurt this last week and the offense looked bad. I think you certainly can make that argument. I had Gronk at the top just because I think he's starting to emerge as a reliable option for Brady at this point. Granted, Godwin's back in the mix and stuff, so we'll see where that goes. But Gronk he doesn't obviously not the old Gronk, but I believe he's starting to emerge with a relatively reliable or more reliable role in that offense. So I think if you're in a pinch, those are a couple of the top guys you're looking at. But dude, Jimmy Graham, I mean, go look at his game log. If you look at Jimmy Graham's profile, like all of a sudden you're starting to think, well, maybe I should be thinking about him. Like,
this is like a podcast from when we started RosterWatch back in 2010.
I know.
on like ESPN Radio Austin talking about these idiots.
Yeah, maybe I should be thinking about him a little more like the Gronk and the Austin Hooper at this point. It's just been a lot of good fantasy production for Graham at this point. Like, I think he's a guy you got to really take your chances with if you've been searching for a tight end. And, then you move a little further down, Alex. Your guy Trey Burton is going into the bye. We'll see where we go from here with him. But then
he's not my guy. I was interested in him last week, but I mean he's a big part of the offense. They really, I mean they talked about this the whole time about how they're going to be into Trey Burton this year, and they really are. When he's been healthy, it's like these other tight ends have gone to dust. They're dust. They're done.
For somebody who's not your guy, you sure do know a lot about him right now.
Yeah.
Dallas Goddard. I think we're on Dallas Goddard watch. I mean, Zach Ertz just looks.
Is he available is he available in some leagues? He's gonna be back after this next week. There's no way he'll be back Thursday, but
Goddard, like if he's out there in your league, time to start getting ahead of the curve on him. And then when I look at the quarterbacks, Alex, I think it's a really good week on the waiver wire for quarterback.
Good. Well, good, because do you want to talk about any of it? Or you just get cheese the sheet and tell people to go check it out. They can go check it out. Let's get to their questions. All right. So here we go. Should I trade? So it's not all these are waiver questions, but I'll get to the questions that were asked, and then I will ask you about whether or not we should be dropping these players. Should I trade away McCaffrey for Gaskin and Metcalf? My immediate thought would be, well, I would like to see the rest of your roster. I'd like to know if you're a winning team or a losing team. If you need to win now this week, but otherwise, absolutely not. I wouldn't. I think that the winner of that trade is the one that gets McCaffrey. But it's not always about winning the trade. Sometimes it's truly about winning the week.
Yeah, and Metcalf is a great consolation prize. So even if you feel like you get swindled giving up McCaffrey, like it never feels too bad coming home with DK Metcalf. That's a great liquidation trade if you're in trouble and you're losing.
It's a great consolidation trade if you're a winning team.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're a winning team, Connor Nero, you're not making that trade. And I feel I wouldn't want to make it unless I really needed to win this. I mean, who does Miami even play this week? I guess that's why we asked.
Miami's on bye, so you can't do that.
Yeah.
You got to get two players that can help you this week.
Yeah. Don't do that.
That's a no.
So was it Indy, Miami, Minnesota, and Baltimore on bye this week? Yeah. Even with the small chance that Ingram might miss a game, are we good on letting JK go? Guess they are still riding the Gus bus. I'm not good letting JK go. I want to go get him.
Yeah, you don't want to let him go. I think you should look at the cautionary tale of DeAndre Swift and be wary.
Rafa Gonzalez asks, trade CeeDee Lamb for Jonathan Taylor in PPR.
Yeah,
I think I would.
Yeah,
I think I would. I mean, those are two golden sons, but my wife is a CeeDee Lamb owner in one of her leagues, and if a Jonathan Taylor trade came across her desk, I'd be telling her to slam the accept button for sure.
It's funny. I told people last week on the Tradecast, Alex, they should at least investigate what they could get for Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb before the cat was all the way out of the bag. And it wasn't a must-sell situation, but I think it was smart to at least see what was out there, because that's going to be more difficult now.
Right.
And I don't think you think you're playing with players that are even 85% of what you had going.
Well, one other question somebody asked, and I can't find it, but I wrote it down, was okay, so here's what it is. John Ryan says, what's going on, guys? He wants to know whether to pick up JaMychal Hasty or Jeff Wilson Jr. I want the devil. I don't know. I want to see they've been talking up JaMychal Hasty. I like JaMychal Hasty. I like JaMychal Hasty's agent. I think that I liked what I saw of him at the Senior Bowl. I like what I've talked to scouts about JaMychal Hasty who liked him. What did he get last night? He got like 9 touches, something like that. I mean, he came in and he
looks good too.
Yeah, he got some good run. So I mean, for me, that's easily JaMychal Hasty. FF Hookem L says, do we believe AJ? So there's a ton of AJ Green questions. Do we believe in AJ Green enough now to bid 10% fab or higher as a wide receiver 3? FF Hookem, you should go to the site and look at Byron's exact recommendation for the free agent acquisition budget bid for AJ Green. But I think you're right there. I think you're right there in the pocket. You're pretty close with that.
He sounds like a pricing king.
Yeah, pretty close.
We got a junior pricing king. We got some junior pricing kings out there.
And apparently he's a Texas Longhorn too. So has a lot in common with the original pricing king, Byron Lambert over here. All right. Speaking of the original pricing king, bunch of questions in the chat about the so let's just catch up here. FF Hookem has another question. Desperate for another RB, worth it to break down my Josh Jacobs for Swift/Freeman or Jacobs/Crowder for Gaskin/Freeman? I would say
I like the first one way better than the second one, right?
Yeah, but I'd like to know how desperate he is at running back. Seems pretty desperate.
Well, you would get Freeman. It'd be depending on how desperate you are at running back and flex. You get Freeman on Thursday night against the Eagles, and then you get Swift in that Atlanta matchup. Versus if you have Jacobs, he's got Tampa Bay coming to town this week.
That's a tough matchup. And so, but Freeman will have Detroit, who nobody can, they can't tackle anybody. So I don't know, man. I don't want to. He says he has no other startable running backs, and the waiver wires picked Bear.
I thought Freeman has the Eagles on Thursday night, Alex.
Atlanta? No, DeAndre Swift has Atlanta. Oh, I'm thinking Freeman is an Atlanta Falcons still. I'm sorry.
Am I living in the
right.
zone
Right. I'm sorry. So Devontae Freeman, who is now a New York Giant, has Dallas. Swift has it. Detroit has Atlanta. All right. Thank you for correcting me there. Yeah, I mean, you can do it. It isn't a good trade, but if you're 1-4 or 1-5 now, something like that. All right. So we can't keep answering we'll answer one more question here, and then we'll get to the other ones. He needs a quarterback bad. Stream Burrow, Bridgewater, or trade don't make any of those trades. Don't trade Justin Jefferson and Robbie Anderson for Big Ben. Jesus Christ. No, don't do that. And I don't know between Burrow and Bridgewater right now. Who's Burrow play Cleveland?
I like Bridgewater against the Saints this week.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the matchups like this. We haven't even done I just finished the matchup, so we haven't done rankings. I haven't even looked at that, so I don't have those guys ranked. But do not trade Justin Jefferson or Robbie Anderson.
Pick up Burrow or Bridgewater and package one of them with Robbie Anderson, and then go after Justin Herbert or maybe Big Ben. So
no. He just said Justin Jefferson or Robbie Anderson for a quarterback.
I know. I said pick up Burrow or Bridgewater if that's one of your streamers, and just don't do anything with Jefferson, but take Robbie Anderson.
No.
And take Robbie Anderson plus Bridgewater or Robbie Anderson plus Burrow. And
for a quarterback? Go after Herbert? No. Just keep Burrow. Keep Burrow or keep Bridgewater. And keep Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson's been a wide receiver 1 this season. I think that's crazy.
Well, he fell off this last week. I would look at the matchups. I would look at the matchups.
No,
it depends on what situation.
Man. Come on, dude. You do the trade cast. We don't do we can't pay up for these quarterbacks like this, especially not a guy like Herbert. He's been good so far, but he could easily. He could fall off. I would be sick if Robbie Anderson keeps up a clip anything like this, and I traded him away in a package just to trade up a quarterback. If Burrow and Bridgewater are available, just play one of those guys, man. Just look at our rankings and see which one's better.
I would play the matchups, but I think I tend to agree with that advice, but this guy's asking to me because he's not liking his quarterback situation. So if you see those guys an upgrade, Big Ben, he was bad this last week. He's getting Deontay back this week. He's been pretty decent on the season. I mean, Bridgewater and Burrow have been fine. I think you just got to look at the matchups.
Deontay's a guy you need to talk. Yeah, Deontay's a guy you should. I'd like to recommend you maybe talk about him in the trade cast because we got a Twitter question about whether people should drop him. So makes me think people are worried about him.
He's looking at Herbert at home against the Jaguars too, is the other thing this guy's looking at. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's as egregious as you do, but I get what you're saying.
All right. Can you drop them? Can you drop these guys? We already talked about J.K. Dobbins. That's a no, right?
I wouldn't.
Okay. Duke Johnson, is he droppable at this point?
Yes, but he could be people think he looks better than David Johnson. So if I was a David Johnson owner, I would consider picking him up as well.
What about Dalton Schultz?
If there's a better tight end option higher on the sheet, I think everybody's taking a hit in Dallas, but Schultz actually still had some semblance of production in what was a horrible Andy Dalton game. So I'm not sure that all is lost for Dalton Schultz left.
Staying at tight end. Somebody asked, what about Evan Ingram?
I
probably wouldn't. I think it's tight ends it's mean streets, and it's mean in the tight end streets right now. I'm not sure you're gonna be able to pick up anybody unless you just want to play the waiver wire game every
81%, 3 targets, 30 yards. I'd probably drop him for Hooper or Gronk, right? At this point.
I might drop him for Hooper. I would have to look at this week's. Well, we know that Hooper gets Cincinnati this week. I would drop him for Hooper.
Hell, I might drop him for Graham at this point.
What about Zach Moss? He didn't do a thing yesterday.
Yeah, he's been a slow. He looked like he was going to really get a shot at the beginning of the season to have a role, but it's been kind of the injury and looks like a slow reintegration here. 25%, 5 touches, 10 yards. He should be owned. If he should be owned at the bottom of a roster in a competitive league, 12, 14, 12, 14 teams, he should definitely be owned, even though he's not performing. And then I still think if you own Singletary, he should be owned too in most formats.
What about Benny Snell?
He should be owned by the Connor owner. I think Benny Snell even scored.
What if you're not a Connor owner?
It was a blowout. No,
it's a freaky touchdown. I mean, he's a backup.
Well, yeah, it was a blowout. He got in a little bit. To me, it shows like he's the guy you still want to own if you're a Connor owner. If you're not, then who cares?
Mark Ingram. I'm finally gonna get it out of you that he's droppable. He should have been dropped weeks ago. It's like if you would have dropped him, you wouldn't have had to put up with all this bullshit.
Yeah, he's droppable. Depends on who you're picking up, but the injury certainly enhances that case.
Matt Breida kind of made a little bit of a comeback last week, but can you still drop him?
Yeah, you can drop Matt Breida. He's also a guy that, like, I guess could be rostered in a super deep format, but yeah, he can be dropped.
It's been asked 2 times here in the chat if these guys can drop Alexander Madison.
I would try to trade him to the Dalvin owner first, but
this guy says, please don't say trade him to the Cook owner because that's not an option.
Then you can drop him, and the Cook owner is going to go pick him right up.
Now, that guy knows you all too well. That guy, Alex Cage. Look, check it out.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this too, Alex. I think that that guy who was asking about Burrow earlier, I guess he hadn't looked at the matchups because that's against the Browns this week.
Yeah.
And the Browns were that great matchup on paper for Ben this last week that didn't pan out at all. But I just think that's because the Steelers blew those idiots out. I don't know. So
yeah. That's what I was saying about Burrow. I'm excited. I'm excited about playing Burrow versus Cleveland. Okay, finally. They asked about Russell Gage. I'm not sure it's necessarily like he must drop, but maybe he's in a tough. Here's the thing, guys. If you have a backup quarterback or somebody, a backup tight end or something, you're asking us about dropping players like Gage, you shouldn't be doing that. But would you drop Russell Gage you drop him for some of the top waiver? Would you drop him for some of the tier 2 waiver wire guys?
Russell Gage? Yeah.
Of
course.
Okay. Okay. And finally, no, there's 2 more. Scottie Miller. Is he droppable now? And is Mike Evans healthy?
No, but dude, when they've got Godwin out there, they're not going to both eat every week, and it's going to be Godwin who's the more reliable dude. So it's definitely it definitely hits Evans a little bit to get Godwin back. But dude, if you've owned Evans the last few years, that's what you're used to. Like, he has the massive outbursts of points. He's not the most reliable guy on a week-to-week basis, but when the season's said and done, he has a lot of fantasy points on the board.
And the last one, this dude knows he's coming off the COVID list. He's coming back into action, but can he still drop Corey Davis?
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Corey Davis sucks, man.
All right, that'll be the pod, man. Thanks to everybody for listening. Please give us a like, a subscribe in YouTube, and make sure you click the bell so you can get alerts and you can come in and chat with us here whenever we're on the podcast. Byron will have the Tradecast tomorrow. I will have the DFS walkthrough on Saturday. Had a bunch of good luck with DFS last week, thanks to all the emails and all the tweets that you guys sent. We're going to keep winning. Love you guys. Go to RosterWatch.com. Check out our content there. It's the best way to support us. Thank you.